Hello and welcome everyone. So in today's video we will look at timelines. So first of all, I will show you guys a few examples of how you guys can use timelines inside your projects. So let's get on with it. So first of all, what are timelines? So timelines is basically a value of time across which you will change another value which will do a desired effect as you would want it to. So in this example, as you guys can see, I have four cubes here, and in the first example, so we'll look at this one first. So in the first example, as you guys can see, we have a cube that gets bigger and smaller. So for this, what I'm doing is I'm starting off with event begin play. To bring in a timeline, you can right click, you can search for timeline, and you can add a timeline. Now there's nothing much going on here, but you need to double click and open the timeline, and then you have this window. So first thing you can look up here is the length of that timeline. Now for me, I'm going to change this length to 4, and then you can choose a track down here. Now the majority of the time I only use float and vector tracks. Float track is a scalar value which goes from 0 to 1 or even negative values, but it only has 2. However, vector has 3. So vector has x, y, and z. So here I'm going to add a float value, and I'm going to shift and left click down here. So at 0 seconds, I want to start off with a value of 0. At 2 seconds, I will go up to a value of 2. And then I'll shift click again, and at 4 seconds I'll go to a value of 0 again. So now if I compile this, now back in the event graph, I'm going to plug in my event begin play down here, and I'm going to select my my cube. I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to do set scale. So set full scale 3D. And in this, I'm going to drag my my new track which I have just made and plug it in here. Now you notice that this is green and this is orange, because the orange represents the vector and this represents the float, but it does still work. So now if I plug the update in here, and I'm just going to go into timeline and turn on loop and then compile. Now if I click simulate, as you guys can see, our cube gets starts off from almost nothing, goes up to size 2, and then goes back down. But this is a float value that is affecting the whole cube. What if we wanted to affect only the z-axis, let's say? So for that, what we can do is we will go back to our event graph. So we will open up our timeline again, and this time to delete a track, you can right click to rename or delete it. So I will delete the older track, and this time I'll add a vector track. So we'll have the X, Y, and Z options. You can also name your tracks down here if you like. For example, I can name this scale. Now then, so since we only want to change the Z, we need to have our X and our Y at the value of 1. So our object actually has some mass to it, some scale to it. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll just bring forth the X value. So at time 0, I just want it to be 1. That's it. Same thing with the Y value. At 0 seconds, I just want it to start off at value of 1 in scale. Now the Z value is the one we are looking for most. So at this, at 0 seconds, we want this to start off at a value of 0. At 2 seconds, we want this to go up to a value of 2. And at 4 seconds, we want this to go to a value down to 0, and we make sure the loop is on again. Now we can turn the rest on, as you guys can see. So these values will stay at 1, and the z-axis should increase and decrease. Now back inside the event graph, we need to reconnect our track to down here. Now this is because now we have a scale track, so as a vector track, so you can see that this is the appropriate track that should have been connected here in the first place. Now if we click compile, and when we simulate, you guys can see now it's not a uniform change in the scale, but it's only going from Z. So the original cube size, the X and the Y, have kept that size. However, the Z is changing constantly. So this is how we do this. Now then, the next thing we can look at is how to add a material and have a dynamically change using a timeline. So for this, what we can do is, in the same timeline actually, what I'll do is I'm just going to drag forth my my cube. So this is a different cube that I've been working with, and I'll so down here what I'll do is I'll do set vector parameter value on materials. So whichever material you have applied here, so if I go to the material, so inside the material I have made a vector parameter which you can press V and bring it in, and make sure you have named it appropriately. Then I have connected that to the base color. So now if I save this, and then you want to right click and create a material instance, where inside here you can change these values. Now back inside our blueprint, so down here you need to remember the name that you gave your material, so your vector parameter. So mine is called vector color. So down here I will call this vector color. And now what we can do is we can plug the update into here and the scale into here, but we still need to change the value itself. So I'll rename this and I'll call this color. Now then, so this will be 1, the X and the Y will be 1, 2. So let's see what effect it has right now on this. So if you were to click simulate down here, what you guys will notice that it's going from a white color to a green color, and it's constantly looping. So it's allowing a dynamic change in our material. So this is the one more way of using the timeline. Now the last thing we will look at is using the timeline to get a movement going. And as you guys can see, I have done that down here. So what I'm doing down here is I have another cube down here which has a it's set to movable, so it can actually move in the scene. I have added a add relative location, and I have made a track for that. So what I'm doing here is, so at 0 seconds I'm only changing the Y, so it's only going across the Y-axis. So at 0 seconds the value is 0, at 2 seconds the value is 5, and then again at 4 seconds the value is -5. And then at 6 seconds the value comes back to 0. So now if I go back to the event graph, now I'll just drag my event begin play down here, and then I'll compile this, and now we can play. And now as you guys can see, the cube is actually moving its position. So it goes 5 degrees this way, and then it comes 5 degrees back down here. So this is how you can use your animation timeline. I hope you guys found this useful. This was I made this because I'm working on a different tutorial for seasons. So I hope you guys found this useful, and thanks for watching.